This is interview number 3 with Gladwyn Bush. It is taking place at her home in South Sound on the 15th of July, 1993. The interviewer is Heather McLaughlin for the Cayman Islands Memory Bank.
Asked you why you didn't go in for dressing the dead.
Yes, I said, why don't you go in for dressing the dead? Lord, you say, I wouldn't have put my hand on a dead pot. I said, I know you something. I said, somebody going to have to put their hand on you, you know.
That's right. It's not the dead you need to be afraid of, it's the living.
It's the living. That's what you got to watch.
Yeah.
The dead is dead and you have no more harm from them.
Yes. So what, had you been interested in nursing from when you were young, or this was just something to do?
Well, it was the first thing that we got here to do at that time.
Yes.
And so that was it.
Did you enjoy it?
I love working with old people.
You do?
I really
that's
do.
Nice. Yes.
You know, they could bring back poor old cousin Mary, and they had a very unhappy marriage.
Yes.
But it didn't kill her. She had a spirit of youth.
Yes.
That's
well, that's
one thing
wonderful,
about,
isn't it?
You know, I can never forget one night. Well, you know Guy Miller from that side.
Yes.
He used to rent a room in her house. She had a nice big house. And it is still standing because Jonas sold it to a Jamaican man, but he's married to a Caymanian. My grandniece he's married to. And it is still standing pretty good. And so Guy was in his room, and I turned the light on because I used to sleep in the room with Cousin Marianne. On a single bed, she had her double. And when I looked, Cousin Marianne was in this funny position, and I said, Guy, come here. You know, Guy is a very pleasant person, very pleasant, or I find him so. He said, what is Miss Lassie? I said, come here quick. I said, something's gone wrong with Marianne. And he looked at me. He said, Miss Lassie, Mary, he used to call her, Mary is dead. I said, no.
No.
That's Richard.
Yes, I met him the other day.
I said, she isn't dead. I said, and I felt her pulse, and they were still, and I felt her throat. I said, she's still breathing. I said, Guy, get me the alcohol, and she had her bottle of Excel. I said, quick as you can. We rubbed her until she came to. And I will always remember her words. She looked at me. Oh, she says, Lassie, you did me a wrong something. That was the happiest I've ever been in my life where I was.
Oh, my
She says,
goodness.
don't do it again.
Oh.
But she never said where she was.
No, but people do talk about having these experiences when they're near death.
She says, she said, I was happy. Why did you bring me back? And I don't think it was 3 months after that she passed away. I found her a nice old soul.
So what made you give up the nursing then?
Well, what made me give up the nursing was my last patient was Julia Navis. You hear about her? That was on Cruy Road.
Don't think so.
You don't think so? Well, she was another sweet old soul.
Yes.
She was Marianne's first cousin, two sisters, children.
Okay.
And she spent most of her time in America. She was taking care of a doctor's 2 daughters who thought the world of her.
Yes.
Never forgot her. They came here before she died.
Yes.
And I'll tell you about her. I spent 10 months, 10 months, 2 weeks, and 3 nights with her. And her brother's name, John Navis. Maybe you've heard his name.
Navis? Navis? No, I've never heard that name.
You never? He was living right on Cruy Road.
No.
Oh, yes. And he was a pleasant, what we would call a simple person.
Mm-hmm.
But he was just a pleasant person and a loving brother to a sister.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 10 months. I think it was 3
Mhm.
weeks, 3 nights that I spent with them. And you know, she could bring up so many, could bring up so many tales of yesteryear
Yes.
that she kept you interested with it.
Yes.
She used to work down Peter with the owner, Mistress Lambert.
Oh, yes, yes.
I'll show you if you just follow me.
Telling me about looking after this Marianne,
Julia.
Julia, and she gave you, left that
same-
mirror for you.
Yes, she left the mirror and she charged me not to make anybody. And you know, the funny part of it, in the night when she would talk, she would say to me, she talked of going home, like you would say, well, I'm getting in my car and going home.
Yes. It was so
She
real
talked
to
of
her.
dying just like with no
Uh-huh.
dread of tomorrow.
Isn't that
And
wonderful?
she knew the Bible, that she could tell you scriptures that by heart. It was beautiful just to listen to her. And she said to me, she says, Gladwyn, when my end come, I just want you and John in my room with me to close my eyes. And do you know, that night, I never forget it. The morning I left to go to the store, well, she had the car, Eloise, you might know Eloise, what the old fellow, she used to run a taxi. I forget her surname, but she used to take me up and down, and Julia used to pay for it, not me. And just before Eloise came, she said to me, she said she was blind, you know, couldn't see her hand before her. And when I cleaned her up that morning, gave her her breakfast, she said to me, she said, Lassie, help me up. I want to sit up on the edge of my bed. I say, okay, Aunt Julie. And I'm going to put these pillows up against your back. She said, yes. And she said to me, she said, tell me something. She said, what John meant by putting that old bath pan with all of those bottles against my shaddock tree. And I say to her, I say, Aunt Julia, you see that bath pan with a bottle? She say, yes, and I see a beautiful morning. Oh, she say, what a beautiful morning. I say, Aunt Julia, she say, and I see you too, you know, Lassie. I see you plain as plain can be. Well, it struck me, you know. And so she said to me, because I used to always kiss her goodbye for the morning. She say, you know something, lass, when you come tonight, you'll see me, but I won't see you. But she say, I don't want anybody but you and John in the room to close my eyes. When I stepped into the house around 7 o'clock that night, and Julie was beyond the world. I wasn't there of her when she passed on. Just John and I. I had to say she must have seen the future.
Yes, yes. So she thought she was seeing with the physical eye, but she was seeing with the spiritual eye.
Spiritual eye. I always remember her. And she said, I want nobody but you to dress me, Lassie.
Did you find that difficult when you'd be looking after people for a long time like that and then they passed away?
I found it, in a way, it seems like something I lost.
Yes.
Not for the money I was getting to catch me straight.
But you cared for them.
Yes, you had to care. That's why I preferred tending to elderly people.
Yes. And they were the ones who needed you the most.
You're right.
Now, you were doing this nursing while you were working in the shop?
Yes, yes.
And what, were you a clerk in the shop?
I was clerk in the store.
Now, is that the same store where Mr. Cook-Bodden has his t-shirt place now?
No, the other side. It was there when I first started, but then Miss Eric sold that place. What a pity she sold it. Because that was Desmond Watler's father's shop that she had bought, that she had bought out, you know.
Oh, I see. On the other side of
Where you see Eden's store now, that was personally his mother's, for she bought it from Desmond and Connie. And then she sold it to Adams, which I think she made a big mistake.
You mean where Billy Adam has his hobbies and books?
No.
No.
She sold it. It was where you see Eden with his little tourist store now.
Which
Eden Cookbodden.
Was that his first name? I didn't know.
Yes, Eden
No,
Cookbodden.
I didn't know his first name was Eden. That's why I was getting confused, because I was thinking Eden was the last name.
He's a Bodden.
Yes.
He's a Bodden.
Yeah,
his father
know
was a
him.
Bodden.
I knew his children because I taught them when they were in school.
Yes.
I know who he is, but I don't know.
And then Miss Eric owned the English shop.
Oh.
And she owned that, and she sold that out. Very short-sighted of her.
Yes. So did you enjoy working in the shop?
Yes, I got along with her good. And Hazel was manager of it,
Yes.
Hazel Bodden that passed on. Tibbet's sister-in-law. She and I became phone friends. She was just a sweet person to work with. She was so honest. That was Hazel's name, honesty.
Did you work there for long?
Around 12, 13 years I was there.
And this was before you worked with Dr. Horter or after?
It was after I worked, because Dr. Horter passed away long before then. He went down to West Bay.
Went to West Bay, and that was the... So you worked with him until he went to West Bay, or did you leave?
No, I left after my father got sick. And I had to come home to tend to him because Mara couldn't do it by herself.
And he had been so good to you that you wanted to
I wanted
do your best for him.
I wanted nobody else to tend to my people.
Yes.
I did the work that they needed to be done.
But it must have been a blessing to you to know that you had the knowledge and the skill to
Yes,
help him.
because what caused me to leave Mrs. Roberts was Dr. Hort at that time was tending also to Mrs. Roberts when Dr. Roy got me to stay with her as a nurse. And in those days they were getting 6 shillings a day and 6 shillings a night if you spent the night. Well, that was big pay then,
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, Dr. Horter came to see Mrs. Roberts, and he was tending to my father at the same time. And he said to me, he says, Gladwyn, he says, Nurse Gladwyn, he says, you are needed at home. Your father has a bad state of bladder trouble, and it's only you can tend to it. He says, his urine has to be drawn off, and it's only you that can tend to it. So I had to go there, Dr. Roy's office, and tell him that I couldn't stay with Miss Roberts any longer. And when he told my father that I would tend to him with the drawing off of his urine, he looked at him, he says, now, Captain Dick, don't look on Nurse Gladwyn as your daughter. Just look on her like she's just a nurse.
Yes.
And of course, at first my father was timid because he didn't want me to see for him. But after that, he was quite confident.
Yes.
And it was 3 weeks that he was really sick with his bladder trouble.
Now, Dr. Roy was looking after him, did you say?
No, and Dr. Roy was looking after Mrs. Roberts.
Mrs. Roberts.
He was paying Mrs. Roberts' bills
Oh, I
at
see
that
what
time.
you mean when you say looking after, responsible for it. Yes.
Responsible for her debts.
Okay. Now, did you ever get a chance to use the shorthand and the other things that you learned about?
No, I did not, because I never finished. It was Carmen Gorin that after the school was over or finished with, I went about 6 months, but I did not complete my shorthand. I went further in the bookkeeping than I did in the shorthand.
And did you get to use the bookkeeping when you were working in the store?
No, yes, I did, because first when I went there, just between you and I,
Mm-hmm.
they would sell the stuff and just pass it out. And I'd say to Hazel, if I wasn't too fast,
Mm-hmm.
if I were in her place, she was manager, of course, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I say, Hazel, if I were you, I'd get a exercise book and keep an account of what you
What's
sell, you
going
know.
on? Yes.
She said, Lassie, you think that's wise? I say, well, in a contention come, you show the book.
Mm-hmm.
And she agreed, and she done so. And many a day she say to me, she says, Lassie, you know, I got you to thank for
Mm-hmm.
many little hints she gave me. I said,
Mm-hmm.
well, it's protective.
Mm-hmm.
It's very protective.
Mm-hmm.
And the question come through the books
That's
before
right.
then.
You have it down there in black and white.
Right.
Nobody can argue about it.
Not a bit of it.
Now, you said that your grandmother or your great-grandmother, I've gotten confused now, was a midwife?
No, it was Jane Hulston, the
Jane
midwife.
was
The
a midwife.
midwife. I was the
Uh-huh.
last child.
She was the last child that you were the last child that she
She
delivered.
brought in the world.
Uh-huh.
And that was March
Yes.
1914.
But she was some family to you, wasn't she?
Yes, she was my grandfather's first cousin, I
Mhm.
think. She was my grandfather's first cousin.
This is the lady that married
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes, yes.
So I guess...
Jones married my grandfather's aunt.
Uh-huh.
hmm
I was just wondering if the kind of the nursing was something you inherited from her or something. But
I suppose it's
Mhm.
just what one takes up.
yes,
No.
yes.
You know, after all, it's good to learn some of every little thing.
That's
it comes good in life.
That's right.
I
Knowledge never
mind,
goes to waste.
I mind my mother, my sister, and I mind our mother.
Mm-hmm.
We had no outside help. We did not want it.
Mm-hmm.
We mind our father at his time. And after that, I mind my sister when she got sick. I mind my brother. I took care of my brothers, and I took care of my husband.
Oh, my.
And that
kept you
all
busy.
came in good for me,
Yes,
because I
yes.
knew just what to do,
That's right.
you see.
And if you'd had to hire somebody,
You would
the
been,
care wouldn't have been as good, and you
no,
wouldn't have been able
it's
to afford
nothing
it.
like caring for yourself,
No,
thyself
that's
that way.
right.
So I don't regret it.
No.
I guess we all, if we had our life to live over,
Mm-hmm.
and we could avoid many pitfalls, we would do it.
Yes.
If we
well,
could see them before we fall in them.
as they say, hindsight is a wonderful thing.
Right, that's
But we
right.
don't all have that, do we?
No,
Now, Miss Lassie, let's talk about how you got into your painting. You told me the last time you liked to draw these pictures at school and make the other children laugh.
yes.
But you really, all this time when you were doing your nursing and
I never had
everything, you
no
never had
time. No, I never
thought of
bothered.
it, no.
Never bothered with it.
so how did you get started with the painting then?
Well, I really can't say that I remember, but as a matter of fact, this was one of...
Whoops, wait.
my gosh,
No, it hasn't broken anything, it just pulled out. That's all.
I forgot that. You see that?
That's good.
In that square frame there, that went into one of the first shows that was held in the island, was by a Mrs. Morton, that was staying in Mrs. Eric Cookboden's cottage, her and her husband.
Oh, yes, yes.
Uh-huh.
That's
And
the
I
one
think,
with the angels there.
yes, yes.
What's the name of that one?
I can't say I got any name, but she said it reminded her of an Egyptian painting, and she put it in the little small show she was having,
Mhm.
and she said to me, she says, Lassie, keep up painting, because I painted something on the glass and gave her, you know. She said, Lassie, keep up painting. I think you're going to go somewhere one these days. I never forget her. She was a sweet also. She was a journalist when she was in England.
Uh-huh.
And her husband was a designer.
Oh, yes, I know the people that
Uh-huh. He designed for royalty.
Yes, dress designer. Yes, I know. I
He
knew
was.
those people.
And he was a pleasant old soul.
So you had just started painting at that time?
At that time.
And that was in the 70s, was it? Or
I think it was
80s?
some around about the early 70s that she had it. Because she also had a song contest. And I put in a song at that time.
Yeah, I know that. So what made you paint that painting? What
Well,
inspired that?
It just came to my mind's eye.
And is that painted? That's not painted on canvas, is
No,
it?
it's on glass.
That's on glass?
That's on glass. And I painted one for Mrs. Cookwadden,
Yes.
the 3 Hebrew children in the fiery furnace.
Oh, yes. Shadrach, Meshach, and
Yeah,
Abednego.
Abednego.
So you started painting on glass?
I started painting on glass.
And it just came to your mind one day, let me try to paint? Is that how that went?
Well, as a matter of fact, it just came to me. But the first time I thought of canvas, it was through Betta Monson. When she came, she saw a couple pieces that I had painted on glass. She says to me, she said, Lassie, you ever tried painting on canvas? And I told her, no, I never got in contact with canvas. She says, well, I think, she says, Hamilton, I think, was the one that started selling canvas first. Hampstead.
Yes.
Hampstead. And the two of us went to Georgetown, and I bought a couple of the small ones, you know. And that's really what started it.
And what kind of paints did you use there when you first started? Do you remember?
Well, I don't remember, but I picked up what I thought would be usable, but I don't remember.
But it was artist's paints.
Yes, it was artist paints. I picked artist paints.
And you bought some brushes.
Yes.
And do you still use? Do you have a particular favorite kind of paint to use today?
Well, I tell you frankly, I use the first one come to my hand. I find one almost as good as the other.
Yes.
That's how I find it. I don't see that one is any better than the other, in my estimation of them.
They're all the same. Yeah. Do you mix the colors or?
Yes, I do. If the color is too strong and just not how I want it, I take and mix it.
And mix it up to get it the way you want. And
to get it the color that I really want.
do you use different sizes of brushes or pretty much?
Yes, I do. Different sizes.
And this is all you just worked this out by trying things. You didn't have any instruction at all?
None whatever.
That's probably why they're so good.
Well, I hope they are. But I had no instruction from anyone. And I'm glad I did not.
Yes.
Very glad.
I know that my husband paints, and he was painting for a long time, and then he started taking classes, and he was trying to paint the way the teacher was telling him to paint. And it wasn't nearly as good as when he just
done it himself, you know. It was 1 or 2 people came here and said to me, say, Gladwyn, why don't you get rules? Say, you don't use a rule. I say, no, I draw my lines with my brushes.
Yes.
I call it a waste of time. I see them fumbling with a rule. Sometimes you see them, and then they draw it over, they draw it again. A sheer non-stick, a brush, and you can always make a line.
So you don't make any sketch beforehand?
No,
paint.
I keep painting. I don't sketch.
Now, do you have a picture in your mind before you start to paint of what you want it to look like?
Yes, I do. It comes to my mind's eye. And I go according to what my mind's eye
in your mind. Now, most of your paintings have a religious theme.
They do.
So is there something particular that happens that makes you want to paint?
Have you ever had a dream of Jesus?
Yes, I have.
Well, you'll understand me. I'll never forget the last dream I had of him. I dreamt I was in a very strange place. And all of a sudden, I heard a voice call my name. It was, to my thinking, the sweetest sounding voice. And I was sitting if you don't mind listening to me.
No, I'm happy to listen.
I was sitting in like a field, a place I'd never in my life seen, but I can't describe it to you. This is a dream now, you know, not a vision, a dream. And I was sitting down, and it seems as if the voice was so near to me, but yet it was so low. And beyond the field was a river, something I'd never seen in my life. And the voice said, Lassie, this cross is for you. And I turned, and I knew him. In my dream, I knew him.
You knew who it was. Yes.
I said, Master, I have so many crosses, cross for me. He said, yes, take it, and I'll walk with you. So I made this when I woke up. Now, in my dream, I took the cross, but in my dream, he had gone.
Yes.
He had gone. But just how you see me with the red, the white, and the purple, he was standing with the cross on his shoulder. And I said, yes, Master, I'll take the cross. And with that, he just went. So I made the poem, and I recited it one night in church, but I never told them the reason.
Can you recite it for me now?
I will recite it for you. One night I had a beautiful dream. It was so very real. I sat down beside a river somewhere in a field. The landscape was beyond description. Breathtaking is really the word. I was startled when I heard my name called in a voice that could scarcely be heard. I turned, and I saw my Savior. I knew him by his gentle smile. On his shoulder he carried a heavy cross. He said, this cross is for you, my child. But Master, I cried in anguish, the crosses that now I do bear. He smiled on me a smile of love and answered, but it's no crosses up there. No crosses up there in my mansions of rest, and if you take this one along, it will be heavy at times, my child, but with you I will travel alone. It will seem heavy, but I will lift the load. And when we come to the end of the way, a crown shall be your reward. I fell at the feet of my Savior. Oh, give me the cross, I cried. I'd carry two instead of one if thou wilt with me abide. Again he smiled, his smile of love upon me, and answered, I will be with thee all of the way. For my cross is the pathway to glory unto everlasting day. And that was before my brother Alveston was brought down, long before. I wouldn't say so long, but I didn't know then that the government was going to build a little house back there for him and knock down the one he was living in. And I often had to say to Myra, I say that must have been to tell me about Alveston. I'll always remember that. Right? I got it down in my diary.
That this was telling you that this was going to be a
problem
problem
for you?
Going to be
another cross for me.
The Lord was going to be with you.
And that was a dream as plain as you're sitting on that sofa.
Yeah.
I had to, because the next morning, I'll tell you how funny it was. Myra came, I slept in that room, and she had her room down there. And she said to me, she said, well, Lassie, if you don't stop talking in your sleep, you know, you're going to get in trouble. She said, you was talking last night, who you was talking to. And I told her my dream.
Yes. yes.
She says, well, you were talking to somebody, I don't know who it was.
Oh, wow.
That's true.
Yeah. And do you have dreams like that now that prompt you to paint pictures as well as to write poems?
No, I haven't dreamed of my master for a long, long time. I haven't dreamed of him.
So these pictures just come into your mind?
Yeah, into my mind's eye. That's how they come. And it's sometimes, I be frank with you, sometimes I feel almost timid to even speak about them.
Yes.
You understand
Because
me?
it's too close to you, yes.
Yes, and then the listener, I don't know how the response
That's right,
to
because
it.
it's special to you and you're afraid the person
Yes.
might not appreciate how...
Right, and they may be saying to themselves, well, she's half crazy and she don't know what she's saying. You can never tell, you
I
know.
know exactly what you mean, because I've had the same sort of experience.
You're right.
So. And you're
But
reluctant
it
to
can
talk
leave
about
you, dreams like that can leave you exultant. So,
it.
you
Yes,
know,
yes indeed.
it leaves you that way.
And it's
That's
great comfort, isn't
it
it?
is. That's why lots of people speaking of Jesus, some of them will say, well, they don't believe he's the Son of God. I have to tell them, I don't have to believe. I know.
You know, that's right.
It's not a belief, it's a matter of knowledge.
Now, your family was religious, and you were brought up.
We were brought up like that.
Yes. Now, it's called the George Hicks Memorial, isn't it?
No, we have the church up here.
Oh,
That church was built, I think, in the late 1890s.
The first one.
That one up there is still standing.
Oh, that one. Oh, okay. That's
It
that
was.
old, is it?
It was the South Sound men that built that and gave it to the Scottish Society. You
Oh,
know.
really?
It was.
Oh. I didn't know that.
That wasn't given to South Sound by any Scottish society.
No.
It was the men of
men
South
did it.
Sound.
And you think that was in the 1800s?
I think it was in the 1890s. I can't tell you the exact year.
And
but
that had...
my cousin Nursani don't remember anything about the building.
No.
And my sister Mara didn't remember anything about the building.
And Nursani is in
92.
Yes.
So she don't, and that would give it. It had to be built in the
before
90s.
that time. But they call it the George Hicks Memorial now,
Yes,
don't they?
Yes, they do.
But of course it wasn't. It was just the South Sound Presbyterian Church before
Yes,
that?
it was before, but it was on posts, you know.
Yes.
And then they decided they wanted a cement floor, and when they got it, what they call renovated, and they named it George Hicks. But poor old Mr. Hicks didn't do anything to that.
No. But he did do a lot in Cayman, though, didn't he?
Oh yes.
Did he preach down here at all?
Oh yes, he did. He did.
Who was a preacher when you came to knowledge?
Mr. Dixon.
Mr. Dixon. Now he rode a horse, did he?
He rode a horse, yes. And what a handsome man he was.
Oh, really?
Oh, Mr. Dixon was a handsome man. He was a Scotchman. Every Tuesday, Mr. Dixon visited South Sound, and he never passed this house. He allowed my mother and father.
So he'd come in and have a little
And
visit.
in those days, it was no ceiling, you know. It was open, open top.
Yes.
And we kept the big canvas hammock. And I see Mr. Dixon now drinking lemonade lying on that hammock. He was made that way.
And you went to Sunday school?
Always did.
Who were your Sunday school teachers?
It was Netta Hulston.
Oh, yes. And you enjoyed Sunday school?
Yes, it was quite a crowd then, you know, crowd of children.
What do you think? Was there anything in your home life or in the church life that has kept you close to those principles that you learn when so many people, when they get older, they
travel
turn
away
from the
Lord.
Lord?
But you know what I must remember? I must remember to tell you about John Hulston's family, you know. Lem's grandfather.
Yes.
I never gave you the names of his people.
I think you did, didn't you?
John Hulston. I don't think so. His first children were twins, Dorothy and Dewey.
Now this is Captain John's parents. You're speaking.
Yes, Captain John's parents.
All right, I better get that.
Yep, you get that.
Okay. And his
John Hulston and Katie Bush. Katie was Nurse Annie's eldest sister.
So Captain John's
Parents
father was named John too.
John Hulston.
And
He
his-
was a merchant.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
With the Websters there.
Yes.
And his wife was?
Katie Bush, which was sister to Nurse Annie. The eldest sister of all.
Okay.
And their eldest children were twins, Dorothy and Dewey.
And Huey?
Dewey. That's what I always heard him called. I don't know how you spell it.
Okay.
I may not be calling it right, but it's what they always pronounce it.
Now Dorothy is the one that looks after Captain John now? No, that's his sister.
Is staying, no. She was married to Connie Bush's father.
Leighton Bush.
Yes. And then the second child was Louis, a son. The third was Stephen, a son. Then it was Blanche. And then it was a son by the name of Dell. He got lost on the Hustler.
Oh.
And Ione. And Mabel is the youngest one.
And where does Captain John come in all of this?
Oh yes, he came in before Blanche.
Before Blanche.
Yes, he's older than Blanche. I think. Thank you for reminding me.
Well, I know Captain John, so that's why
So that's
Dell
it.
was lost on the Hustler.
Yes, Dell was lost on the Hustler.
Okay, so that's another family. Well, that's good. We got all of them now. Okay, so we were talking about your early training and how that stayed with you all your life, your religious training. Why do you think that is? Because so many people, when they grow up, they turn away from what they learned when they were children.
I don't understand them because you know how we were. My father had his faults and failures, but we were not dared to go outside without our prayers being said that he and my mother would hear us.
This is in the morning now?
In the morning, we weren't there to go outside, just stand and say your prayers. Thank God that you have seen another day, was always their words. In the night, we didn't lay down without reading our Bible, saying our prayers. And I had a brother, Nino, he had a beautiful voice.
Yes.
And he loved singing. So after we had the organ, we always sang in the night.
You sang together, the whole family.
My mother sang nice, and so did my father.
Oh, that's lovely.
So it was a singing family.
That's beautiful.
And we had our singing.
So it was just something that you took in along with your food and your drink, I guess.
Yes, we had to.
So
and like how I see some of the parents today making children go to the table and eat up their food without saying what they call grace. We were not there to do it. Before we touched that food, we had to bow our heads and say our grace. And that was the rule of most of the South Sounders. Very factful.
So, were your parents active in the church?
My mother, yes, and also my father. And my sister Myra, well, she was into everything. she was just made, she just loved her church.
Yes. And the South Sound community
Oh, yes. In my early days, they used to have the loveliest concerts.
Yes.
And they used to have the loveliest harvest festivals and cake sales up at the churchyard. Oh, yes, you see, it was South Sounders then.
Describe the Harvest Festival for me.
Well, at that time, the people, well, like my father and Pink's grandfather, and Ernest Foster's grandfather, and Willie Bush, Pink's father, Joe Hines, my great-granduncle, they were all cultivators. And they had lovely bread kind, what we call the bread kind, the cultivation.
Yes.
And my dear, the women would bake up their cakes and cook up their meats if there was turtle or anything. The Georgetowners used to come up and buy up. And we would have...
So they would bring all this produce to the church.
To the churchyard, and it would sell off. It was
sold then, and the funds went to the church.
Yes, I see Mr. Dixon now standing up. They would always have a chair for him and his wife, Mrs. Dixon.
Yes.
And special plates would be put to them, and he would enjoy that meal. I see him in my mind's eye, you know.
Yes.
He loved South Sound.
So you had cooked food as well.
Oh, yes.
And the women would bring that to the...
Yes, they had stalls, you know.
Yes.
It was nice, but of course, as the people, I would say, kept getting less. They did not have those things.
So
and South Sound is going down. I don't think it will be built up again.
It's not the same community.
It's not the same community. No. It's a different place when you think of it.
Yes. Now the concerts, did you and your sisters take part in the
yes,
concerts?
The children took a part, then the grown-ups had their part.
Oh, the grown-ups would perform too?
Oh, yes, it was a mixture.
What sort of thing would the grown-ups do?
They would recite and sing, and the children would have their recitations and dialogues, and they would sing. Yes, we had our good times.
And did you compose some poems?
No, not in those days.
Not in those days.
Wasn't in those days.
It was just something that you learn out of a book, would you?
Yes, we learned what we we learned from books.
Would you ever recite some of the poems that were in your reading book? Or would these be different books?
They would be books that were bought special for the church.
Oh, I see.
The teachers of Sunday school would have them, you know, and they would pick out recitations or dialogues for the younger children.
And where would these books come from?
They would come through Mr. Dixon, and then after Mr. Dixon, it was a Mr. and Mistress Moon that came here.
Oh, yes.
Mr. Moon was a nice person. He used to play the organ beautiful.
Oh, he was a musician, was he?
Oh, he was a musician. He could play by ear just like me, you know. Yes. I know often he would, when Myra sing a solo that I would play for her, he would say to Myra, he says, well, Gladwyn has got my spirit. She can play without a book. He would always say that.
Was he a good preacher?
He was a good preacher, but some people didn't like him. They persecuted that man, sad to say it.
Oh, dear. Why? What did they have against him?
That was yet to be learned.
Oh, my.
One of his most bitter enemies got in trouble in Jamaica, and Mr. Moon was the man that got him out of it when Mr. Moon went to Jamaica. Out of his own mouth to me, he says, Gladwyn, if ever I was sorry in my life of making his life miserable in Cayman's on account of somebody else, he says, he helped me out.
And he regretted
I say that shows what a man he was.
He was a Christian man.
A Christian man. He died in Jamaica. And his wife died, and Mrs. Moon used to preach South Sound too.
Oh, did she?
They went to Africa, you know.
Oh, I see.
He translated some type of language in Africa. He was a high educated man. The people in Georgetown didn't appreciate that man, but they didn't know what he was telling. He did know.
So he'd been in Africa before he came
Oh,
here.
yes.
Oh my, well, that's too bad. Now, Miss Lassie, I have to ask you this question. I hope it's not rude. But where did you get the nickname Lassie from?
Lassie, my brother, my fifth brother, fourth brother, let me say. Yes, Florestan was my fourth brother. They say when Aunt Jane cleaned me up and she tidied the room, my mother and myself, well, she'd call the children, come in and see your little baby sister. Florestan picked me up. He said, well, Ma, this must be Lassie. And you know, I wish today, I think Reverend Talmadge could tell you how many registered letters I got from that brother of mine, Miss Lassie Bush. He never called me Gladwyn.
He always called you that.
He always called me Lassie.
Because you were a little girl.
Yes.
And that name has stuck to you all these
Stuck
years.
all these years.
Did your father call you that?
Oh, yes. But then he got annoyed when he called me Gladwyn.
Oh.
And I knew what, when he called me Gladwyn, I knew what was coming. All I could do is to laugh sometimes. You can laugh at it now, you know, but not at that time.
And what sort of thing would you do that would make him get annoyed?
Oh, I was very rude at times. Very.
Think he spoiled you a little bit?
He did. he would do so.
Yeah. Now, on the phone yesterday, you mentioned to me about your great-grandfather, Denham Christopher Bush, that was
lost
at sea in
1876.
1876.
It was in October 1876.
Can you tell me what you know about what happened to him? Or
well, it was a heavy storm at that time. A heavy storm. And they say he was on his way. Well, he had one of the biggest vessels in that time, which used to carry turtle from the Keys to New Orleans. New Orleans was the place that sold the turtle at that time.
Really?
Oh, yes. And they say he was on his way to New Orleans with a load of turtle. When the storm, they never ever heard what happened to her. They only know the vessel
disappeared, and there was a storm
everybody, and the storm is swept Cayman too, you know.
In 1876?
In 1876.
Do you know the name of his vessel?
If I am not mistaken, which I'm not too clear about it, but I think it was the vessel that he built when he had his first wife, and he called it Bessie.
Bessie, after his wife.
Yes, I think that is the real name of the vessel that was lost.
And it was a regular thing to go all the way from the
Keys to New Orleans. When they left here in January for the Keys, they came back the last of April. And then they would wait until the end of May or the middle of June to go again, and they would not return again to the island until the first week of December. That was their regular route. But his vessel was one of the vessels that took the turtle from the Keys to New Orleans. In those days, they carried them to New Orleans.
Those men really went all over, didn't they?
Oh, yes, it did.
That's amazing. So 1876, he was lost at sea.
He was lost at sea. He had, you know.
Yeah, and this was Richard Christopher Bush.
Yes, he was there. And then, of course, there were his second children. Well, they had fuss and lots of scandal came out of it. And then my grandfather died in 1877.
So he didn't live very long then?
No, he didn't, because his half-brother Denham Bush and Tom Bush poisoned him.
Oh my goodness.
Broke into his house, And he used to drink rum. This is facts. Now I'm giving it to you because it is factual. Broke into his house when he and his family went to Georgetown. And as I tell you, Grandfather Richard was a drunkard. He loved his rum. And they put the arsenic and strychnine into it. 7 days after that, he was a dead man. My father said he never seen agony like that in his life. And from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head was as black as a black man. Tom Bush confessed it on his dying bed.
Oh my goodness.
Factful. Alex Pendleton's father was in the dying room of Tom Bush. Gwen's mother was there. Rona and Leola and Betty, their mother, was there. And Villa Bush, Pink's father, was there and heard his confession. He asked Harold, now this is a personal experience, he asked Harold to come and call my father because he wanted to confess to him. Well, I was around 12, that was around 1926 or 27 that Tom Bush died, I think. Some between the 2 years. And Harold came to the place. He says, Cousin Dick, he says, Uncle Tom is dying. Well, everybody called him Uncle Tom, and he even wasn't if they were not even connected to him with blood, it was Uncle this and Uncle that, you know.
Out of politeness.
Yeah, out of politeness. He said, he sent for you, Captain Dick. He said he wanted to confess something to you. And my father turned, he says, I know, or I have a strong belief what he wants to confess. He said, but I'll go. Well, when he got out the door, I followed him. When we got to the door, as sure as you were sitting on that sofa, by the time we got to the door, Ernest's mother, Rona, then a single woman, was standing by the door. And she had the half door closed, and the top piece was just jarred. And she slammed it in my father's face. And my father said to her, said, that's no hurt to me, I'm Rona. The door is yours, slam it if you like. But I know what your father wants to confess. The deed he did to my father, that's where they got the land. That was where they got the land. And he died, but he confessed it. Willa Bush heard him. Harold Huddleston heard him because years after, Harold come to our place and related just what I'm telling you.
And this is the land down across the road there where
yes,
house is
yes,
now?
that was it. But that wasn't all. After the death, it took control of the runway ground. It took, I'm going to give it to you straight. The two of them, my father, went to his father's cultivation, Tom Bush and Denham Bush, found him up at runaway ground. And they took a machete, that each took a machete at my father. His sister Elizabeth, when he came out, told him land wasn't worth death and to forget it. In 1878, that was in 1877, in 1878, they went up at Halfway Pond. You may not know it, but my father owned the land at Halfway Pond. His father owned it and he became heir to it.
Yes.
And they set all his fruit trees afire and they killed Kit's mare. Kit mare was with a foal and they killed it. It was Clarence Thompson's grandfather, Lawrence Thompson, that fired a gunshot at them because he didn't want his place to catch a fire. And he jumped his horse, went out to Georgetown and reported them with the fire. Government took him up Government took up those two men, but you know what? I'll show you what my father was made from. When the case was called, my father was called as what you call a state witness, and he declared himself the owner of that portion of land. And the judge at that time, I think, was William Eden. He was a justice of peace or a magistrate, something. And he sat on the case. And when he listened to the case, he gave them a judgment of 5 years penitentiary in Jamaica.
Oh my goodness.
For fire was next to murder. And then the mayor was killed. And he turned to my father and he says, Richard, he says, the case is your case. Have you anything to say? My father got up and pleaded for him to revoke his sentence on them. You know what he told them? He says, Your Lordship, he says, it's not going to bring back my fruit trees, and the land is still there. And it's not going to bring back the mayor. I beseech you to revoke your verdict.
Oh my, he was a man.
Yes, he was forgiven. He was very forgiven. He had a hasty temper, but he didn't hold in.
Any grudge?
No grudge.
And so were they excused their sentence then?
Yes, he revoked it, and that's what saved those people. And yet they turned and took half Runway Ground.
Now where is Runway Ground?
Runway Ground is this side of Happy Pond.
This side of Happy Pond?
They sold it.
All in back there, going toward the middle school?
Yes. No, it's going to the east. Runway Ground is going to the east with this way. It was quite a layout. It was Christopher Charles Bush that took in, his slaves took in Runway Ground.
And it's called Runaway Ground.
And it's called Runway Ground, so that's what it is. The people connected with the murderers don't like to hear it, but I tell it to them. I don't care whether they like it or not, because every history has dirty paper into it. Every history.
Now tell me this, since we're talking about places, where was New Road?
New Road was down there. You see Sunset House. From Sunset House up to where you see the government buildings that was once the Jackson's property on the side, on the seaside. They used to call that New Road.
Oh, just a stretch of South Sound Road?
Yes, on the South Sound Road.
But it was just part of the road? And
yes, and they called it up to there. Well, you might not have seen where Denham Thompson house was, but his house was on the seaside. But you know where Pure Art is.
Yes, and that's on Denham Thompson Way.
Yes, Well, that was New Road.
Oh, okay, from there out
to Sunset House.
All right, just that little stretch.
Yes.
And where was Harmony Hall?
No, I don't know. I've heard the name, but I never did get it clear as to what part was the Harmony Hall is.
But it was somewhere in the Georgetown area?
Yes, somewhere around there.
Okay, well,